This is going to be a couple of examples of iteration. So these will be GCSE style questions. It's a topic that is new to the GCSE curriculum, and it's come down from A level, which basically means it's going to be quite difficult. So I'll go through the example. I'm not really going to put much understanding of why this actually works, but more the process of how to do it. So if you can follow this process, then you can answer these questions, you can get all the marks. So the first part of the question will be a rearrangement. And it says, show that x squared minus 4x minus 9 equals 0 can be written in the form x equals the square root of 9 plus 4x. So because we've got a square root there, we know that that must have been x squared. So we want to try and isolate x squared so that we can then square root it, and we'll be left with just an x. So because that's a square root, isolate x squared is equal to, we want to get rid of minus 4x and we want to get rid of minus 9. So we're just going to add on the 4x and add on the 9. So we've got 4x plus 9 on that side, square root both sides, x equals the square root of 4x plus 9, which is, of course is equivalent, x equals the square root of 9 plus 4x. So we've shown that just by a simple rearrangement. That's the first part of the question. And it gives you that answer there because we're actually going to use this in the next part. So iteration means to repeat a process. So if we're repeating a process, that's basically what we're doing in the question. Now, you won't have seen this notation before, xn and xn plus 1, but you will have seen the nth term. So what we've got here is a sequence. So xn, if we change that to a number, so if it was x2, that would just mean the second number in our sequence. So if it was x2, we'd have to add 1 to that 2, x3, that would mean the third term in our sequence. So what we're basically doing here is putting in a value, which is a number in our sequence, and it will then give us the next number in our sequence. So it may sound a little bit confusing if you don't have that much understanding of sequences, but you should be able to follow this process. So it tells us that x0 is 2. So before we start, we haven't got the first term in our sequence yet, we've got the 0 term, and it says that that is 2. So what you want to do is x1, the next term in our sequence, will be equal to, if we have the square root of 9 plus 4 multiplied by x0, and x0 is 2. So 4 multiplied by 2. So that tells us that x1 is equal to, so put that into your calculator, we've got the square root of 9 plus 4 multiplied by 2. So that tells us that x1 is equal to 4.12311. So that's the next term in our sequence. So now, because iteration means repeated process, we're just going to keep repeating that process. So to find x2, what you do is use that formula, but with x1 as your x value. So we're just going to, if you've got that all into your calculator, then you can, instead of a 2, because that was our first guess, we're just going to put the answer, the previous answer. And that comes out as 5.049. So we've got x2, we've got the second term in our sequence. What it wants you to find is x3, so the third term in the sequence. So I only have to do this one more time. x3 is equal to, so I've already got the formula there, the square root of 9 plus 4 times by the previous answer. So press that again, I get 5.40333. And the question says find x3 to 2 decimal places. So my final answer is x3 is equal to 5.40. So that's it, to 2 decimal places. And the reason you do this, so trying to get a bit of understanding in there, is that if you keep repeating that, the value will actually converge and it converges on the solution. So after how many times I've pressed that, we're just getting 5.60555. So that's telling me that the value that I'm putting in is the value that I'm getting out as well. So that is the solution to our original quadratic there.